I always have a lot to say, Alex, but I would like to correct one bit of nomenclature here. When a law enforcement officer takes somebody into custody, that's not a kidnapping, that is an arrest, which is the most basic function of law enforcement. And I think on a broader point, it's worth noting that you judge the tree by its fruit. We've now had these riots for the past, month or month and a half, and so far, at least 25 people have been killed in those riots, not by the police. That is a number that is much higher than the number of unarmed black men who were killed by police officers during the entirety of 2019, which is ostensibly what kicked off all of the riots. So I think when we look around at the chaos on our streets, even over the past few weeks, we cannot tolerate this forever. The reason we have...
Watch his face. Hasan just called federal agents kidnappers, and Knowles doesn't even flinch. Calm as ever, he corrects him. That's an arrest, not a kidnapping. Then he drops the number the media buried all summer. More people died in these riots than were killed by police in all of 2019. The thing they used to justify the riots killed more people than the riots were about. Stay with us, because Hasan tries to walk it back, and he can't do it clean.
Hasan Piker on the left, Michael Knowles on the right. Michael, you usually advocate for states' rights. Do you like federal troops in the streets of Portland? Do you think that something like this is necessary maybe in a place like Oakland?
But to put down an insurrection, absolutely, we do need to get federal officials here. I mean, this is part of what the DHS was founded to do, was to protect federal property, and they were assailing this federal courthouse. But also, our very Constitution is sort of based on this kind of thing. You know, this goes all the way back to 1787, Shays' Rebellion. The criticism of the Articles of Confederation is that they didn't give the federal government sufficient power to put down an insurgency. That is in large part why we got the Constitutional Convention. This is very much in keeping with American politics and American history, and I hope that we can put down the insurgency and restore some order on our streets.
If you were playing the drinking game for the issue is, and you had Shays' Rebellion, take a shot now. Hasan, let's go to you. Your response to these scenes.
Oh, I think this is horrific. The idea that we have unmarked paramilitary troops at the federal level violating the Constitution and also violating our rule of law that is supposed to protect citizens, especially in a circumstance where they are exercising their First Amendment rights, is disgusting, but also expected from the Trump administration. I think Trump is scrambling to win as many people as he possibly can, because everyone is hyper-focused currently on the ongoing devastating pandemic, which has taken more than 130,000 lives. So what he is trying to do in an effort to capture his withering base of support is to put down the boot of law, I guess, to enforce this law and order on largely democratic cities. It's a purely political spectacle. It has devastating, absolutely devastating precedents that it's setting. And I am shocked that libertarians who stand proudly against tyranny are not out in the streets also protesting alongside the moms, and leaving it up to the moms and dads of Portland to push back against tyrannical government overreach in the form of a police state.
Well, it should go without saying. Just one point on this, Alex. It should go without saying that burning down federal courthouses is not a legitimate exercise of one's First Amendment rights. But I would like to correct one thing that Hasan said here, which is that the troops are unmarked. The federal officials are unmarked. That is not true. They're wearing uniforms. The uniforms clearly say what agency they're a part of. And actually, the uniforms identify the agent numbers right above the label that says DHS. So they are very well labeled. And it would be, I know that sometimes the Antifa troops are also wearing uniforms, but I think it's pretty clear who's working for DHS.
I think that we've seen enough, and not only that, but there's literal legislation being pushed forward in Congress currently to make sure that there's actual patches. As a matter of fact, police routinely hide their badge numbers and identifiers when they're working inside of their own local jurisdictions. But to see federal agents originally go in this way, like they did in Washington, D.C., and now in Portland and potentially in Chicago as well, is truly devastating. Just like you mentioned, there is absolutely no way to tell between a federal agent and a boogaloo boy, for example, or an alt-right agitator like the ones we saw doing these demonstrations, reopening the economy demonstrations all around the country. So it is understandable that someone who would want to potentially exercise their Second Amendment rights and also on top of that defend themselves to potentially get into a very violent altercation with federal agents, which would be devastating and also terrifying. I would love to avoid that. One good way to do that is to leave it up to the local jurisdictions to deal with the demonstrators. The outside agitators in almost every single one of these circumstances is not the anti-fascist.
Let's break down what just happened, because this is a masterclass. Michael Knowles opens with a simple foundational point. The Constitution itself was built specifically to give the federal government power to put down insurrections. He goes all the way back to Shays' Rebellion and the failures of the Articles of Confederation. This isn't some fringe MAGA take. This is literally why the founders wrote the document in the first place. And how does Hasan respond? Unmarked paramilitary troops. Except they weren't unmarked. Knowles calmly points out the agents were wearing clearly labeled uniforms with visible agency numbers. Hasan just got fact-checked in real time on national television and barely blinked before pivoting to, well, there's legislation being pushed to make patches more visible, as if that erases what he just got caught. Saying, this is the pattern you'll see all episode. Hasan makes a sweeping, emotionally charged claim, gets corrected with an actual fact, and just moves the goalposts. No apology, no correction, just on to the next talking point. Meanwhile, Knowles stays surgical. He's not yelling, he's not name-calling, he's just quietly dismantling the narrative piece by piece, while Hasan tries to keep pace with vibes instead of receipts. This is what happens when well-actually energy meets someone who actually did the reading. And it's about to get even better, because next, Hasan tries to justify the riots using a body count, and Knowles has a body count of his own.
But the cops themselves, they have all of the power to deal with in your words, a violent rebellion, I guess. But in most circumstances, they agitate, they escalate, and now they have gone so far as to literally kidnap people against the wishes not only of the citizens themselves, but even the governor or even the mayor, who is also the police commissioner, Ted Wheeler, in Portland. This is awful. So much for states' rights, I guess,
Hasan,
for a tyrannical government.
In some of the cities, there are some real public safety challenges, like a city like Chicago, where we have seen, a devastating amount of murders in recent weeks and in recent years. What do you say to people who say the local officials just aren't getting it done, and it's not safe for people, so they need some help?
Ironically, the activists themselves that march on the streets against police brutality are the exact same activists that are also marching and trying to actively stop violence happening in their streets. But what we know is that over-policing is not stopping the problem. We need to look at the root causes of crime, specifically violent crime, and eliminate that. Obviously, no one wants crime to occur in streets. Obviously, the people that live in these communities certainly don't want it to happen, which is precisely why we need to look at the socioeconomic factors that play a significant role in the development of crime when people have no other option, when they feel like there is nothing else to do, when there's no upward social mobility, when the American dream cannot be realized by every single person because we've never reached equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome, equality of opportunity, they find themselves at the precipice of crime. There's also empirical evidence and numerous studies reaching all the way back, even before a time when political theory was a conversation, all the way back to ancient Greece, if you would want to go that far, that shows that crime has a direct relationship with poverty. Solve poverty, you solve crime.
I love that we've gotten ancient Greece and the Shays' Rebellion into this show. Michael, I'm sure you've got a lot to say in response.
I always have a lot to say, Alex, but I would like to correct one bit of nomenclature here. When a law enforcement officer takes somebody into custody, that's not a kidnapping, that is an arrest, which is the most basic function of law enforcement. And I think on a broader point, it's worth noting that you judge the tree by its fruit. We've now had these riots for the past, month or month and a half, and so far, at least 25 people have been killed in those riots, not by the police. That is a number that is much higher than the number of unarmed black men who were killed by police officers during the entirety of 2019, which is ostensibly what kicked off all of the riots. So I think when we look around at the chaos on our streets, even over the past few weeks, we cannot tolerate this forever. The reason we have a civil authority is to maintain the peace, to maintain order, to secure our possessions, and more importantly, to secure our life. And if local officials are not going to do that, then it is absolutely the role of the state or ultimately the federal government.
Last word on this topic to you.
Do you think a police officer that is not even wearing their actual regular gear could go to a different jurisdiction while hiding any sort of significant identifier that they're a police officer and be able to detain someone without even telling them that they're a police officer? No, that would be considered a kidnapping because it's outside of the jurisdiction, which is outside of their scope of power. If you are a federal agent and you are tasked with protecting, let's say, a federal building, like you mentioned, you are not allowed to leave the federal building and go a street over, a block down, and
yes, you are.
Kidnap
you are
someone.
in the DHS.
No, you absolutely are not.
You are.
Absolutely
you are in fact.
allowed
You can,
to do that.
viewers can
As a
look
matter
it
of
up.
fact, so not allowed to do that. That Larry Krasner, the DA in Philadelphia, has threatened to sue any federal authorities that work in these localities without cooperation from the local police force. Which at this stage in Portland, these officers do not have that jurisdiction. They do not have that authority to work outside of the immediate vicinity of the federal courthouse that they are supposedly protecting. Not only that,
Here's where it completely falls apart for the left's favorite Twitch streamer. Michael Knowles brings up Chicago, a city drowning in violence under Democrat leadership for years, and asks a simple question. What do you say to the people who just want it to stop? Hasan's answer? Root causes, socioeconomic factors, equality of opportunity. Translation? Excuses. He wants you to believe crime is some inevitable natural disaster with no accountability attached, rather than the predictable result of the soft on crime. Defund adjacent policies his side has championed in every single one of these cities for a decade. Then Knowles delivers the knockout. At least 25 people killed in these riots, not by police. By the riots themselves, a number higher than the total number of unarmed black men killed by police in the entirety of 2019, the exact statistic that supposedly justified the unrest in the first place. Watch Hasan's response. He doesn't dispute the number. He can't. Instead, he tries to reframe it as the tip of the iceberg and accuses Knowles of treating protesters like a monolith. That's not a rebuttal, that's a dodge. When you can't argue the facts, you argue the framing, and that's exactly what happened here in real time on national television. This is why clips like this matter, because in a 5-minute soundbite on cable news, nobody gets held accountable. But here, slowed down, broken apart, you can see exactly where the narrative collapses. Michael Knowles didn't win this exchange with volume. He won it with math the other side hoped nobody would check.